when we're expecting, or do we need to wait a minute or two?
Well, just a second. I got an email from Rob that said it's not allowing him to dial in.
Okay.
One, two, three, four. You have a quorum without him, but let me see if I can get him a phone number. How come it doesn't have Ashley on the invite, on the Zoom invite? It doesn't have a phone number listed in the meeting invitation.
I don't know. I can invite right here. Oh, no. Copy.
Well, I copied the invitation. I don't want to go to edit it since it's happening real time. That's the strangest thing.
Oh, I only copied the link. I don't have the phone number here. Yeah.
Well, I have it in my thing, but if that's what he's saying, isn't working. Okay, we'll try this. Yeah, but he's trying to join by phone.
Yeah.
Can you do that by phone? Does that work that way? You click the link.
I don't know.
Okay, well, I sent him the number that I had in the thing, but.
Okay.
All right.
Are we ready, or do you want to give him a minute?
We can give him a minute, although I think it's fine to get started too. I don't think he'll miss too much at the beginning.
I'll start slow, and I know Ashley has something to read, so it'll be a couple minutes.
Okay.
This is Michelle. Welcome, everybody. I hope you're all doing well. I'd like to call to order the October 15th Lawrence Douglas County Metropolitan Planning Organization Policy Board meeting. And at this time, I will turn it over to Ashley.
Thank you. My name is Ashley Myers. I'm a transportation planner. And good afternoon, and welcome to the October 15th Metropolitan Planning Organization Policy Board meeting. My name is Ashley Myers, and I will be facilitating the Zoom portion of the meeting. I will work alongside MPO Chair Michelle DeRusso, who is on remote video to facilitate the meeting's proceedings. Currently, I have everyone muted, so we can talk through the general ground rules for today's meeting. This meeting is being recorded and broadcast live on the city's YouTube channel and Public Access Channel 25. During the meeting, please mute yourself by clicking on the microphone icon found on the lower left-hand corner of the Zoom menu next to the video icon. When you are muted, a red line will appear over the icon. This will make it easier for everyone to hear the meeting. Just remember to unmute if and when you want to speak. In the menu, you can also turn your camera on or off by clicking the video icon located next to the microphone icon. For the purposes of this public meeting, please keep your video on for the duration. If If you're participating by phone, you can enter *6 to mute and unmute yourself. Somewhere on your Zoom screen, you will also see a choice to toggle between speaker and gallery view. Speaker view shows the active speaker. Gallery view tiles all of the meeting participants. A few meeting reminders to ensure that the provisions of the Kansas Open Meetings Act are met. As participants, you must state your name and title each time you speak. Individuals who signed up in advance to provide comments remotely will be called upon by name. No one signed up in advance and no one's here right now, but if someone were to show up, the chair will call for in-person public comment for those who are physically present, and I'll direct them to the podium. All motions need to be stated clearly. After a motion is made and seconded, staff will call on each member individually to provide their vote. Staff will then need to announce whether the motion carried and the count of the vote. I want to again remind everyone to please mute yourself when you are not speaking. Now I'll turn the meeting back over to the chair. Oh,
You're muted, Michelle.
You're muted.
See, I'm trying to be clever. That's what I get. Okay, so is there anyone present? I just want to confirm there isn't anyone present at City Hall or online that wishes to make a public comment?
Correct.
Okay. So our first item is to approve the minutes of the August 20th meeting. Do we have a motion?
Messina, Kansas DOT, motion to approve.
Do we have a second?
Commissioner Shipley, second.
Okay, moved and seconded. Jessica, are you going to go through the roll?
Yes, Jessica Morton, your transportation planner. I'll proceed to do an alphabetical order by last name. Roll call vote. Kramer.
Aye.
DeRusso.
Aye.
Finkeldye.
Aye.
Messina.
Aye.
Sands, who, by the way, is not going to be able to join us today because I just looked at the Zoom online and there is no telephone option. It has been removed from the meeting. So, but I can't edit it because the meeting has already started happening. So I sent him an email asking if he can get to a computer. Shipley.
Aye.
Struckoff.
Abstain as I.
Thank you.
Okay,
The motion passes 5-0 with one abstention.
thank you, everyone. It looks like our next item, agenda item 1, is the federal fiscal year 2021 to 2024 Transportation Improvement Program. Jessica, are you doing this?
That's me.
Ashley?
Yes. So I'm Ashley Myers, Transportation Planner, and I'm going to try to share my screen. All right. Again, my name is Ashley Myers, Transportation Planner, and this item is for the Federal Fiscal Year 2021 to 2024 Transportation Improvement Program, or TIP. And I have a little bit of a presentation to talk about what the TIP is and what's in the document. So the TIP is a short-range, 4-year listing of federally funded or regionally significant projects. And the TIP is the implementation arm of the Long Range Transportation Plan, or T2040. The TIP also must be fiscally constrained and only include projects which include funding, and needs to be updated every 4 years. We update it every 2 years, so that way we're not continually doing amendments to it. The public comment period was August 26th to September 25th. We did not receive any public comments. We followed the public comment period process in our public participation plan, which says we need to have the plan available on the TIP webpage and then also on the public participation webpage, and then also printed and placed at locations around the county so people can access them if they don't have internet access. Normally, we put documents at the Eudora Public Library, but they were closed due to COVID, and so we switched that to Eudora City Hall this time. All the other ones are the normal locations. Fiscal constraint means that there's enough financial resources available to fund projects, but the federal government wants to make sure we subtract the operations and maintenance expenditures off the top from our anticipated funding, so that way we have enough funding to pay for the operations and maintenance to preserve the existing transportation service rather than just building new projects. So that's what this table is showing. These two tables show fiscal constraint. The table on the left is the anticipated funding, and you can see that we have more funding listed in the document than we do projects. So that's good. It shows that we have enough funding to fund our projects, and we are in fiscal constraint. The document also has performance measures, and it ties together the performance measures that we have in Transportation 2040 to the implementation of them in the TIP. And one of the things that we have listed in the TIP is how each of the projects is helping us achieve the Transportation 2040 goals. And so each of those green boxes with the X's indicates what the project sponsors told us would, each goal that they would meet. One of the projects there, 140, the West 27th Street Clinton Spillway Connection project, originally didn't have safety marked because the project sponsors didn't include that. But when we evaluated all of it, we realized that that is a safety project, and so it would address the safety goals of T2040. Also, transportation, or the TIP, includes all of our other performance measures. So we have safety targets, and all but one of the non-transit projects are helping us meet those. We have pavement and bridge targets, and we have 3 bridge projects in the plan, and one of those is on the National Highway System, which helps us meet our performance measure goal. We have 4 projects that are pavement projects that are on the non-interstate National Highway System, and so that's another performance measure that it's helping us meet. And reliability has to do with the interstate. We don't have any projects on the interstate in this TIP, and so we're not necessarily doing anything to meet that goal right now in this TIP. The last one that we do have in here is transit, and 4 out of the 6 transit projects are increasing the useful life benchmark of transit vehicles because they're replacing vehicles or they're doing preventative maintenance on vehicles. Another aspect of the TIP is environmental justice and equity. And environmental justice is all about making sure people, regardless of income or race, have equal access to transportation projects and are not adversely impacted when projects are occurring or are do not have projects. The low-income population comes from the Housing and Urban Development data. The federal government doesn't tell us what measures we need to use in order to identify low-income and minority, and so we use the HUD data because it matches the Community Development Block Group data that identifies low and moderate income households in the county. And then also minority population is census data as well. And both of those are block groups, and they are mapped here. So anywhere that there's the light gray, which is the low to moderate income block groups, or the hatched, that is the minority, those are considered environmental justice areas. And we want to be extra sensitive to those areas. Now, the reason why Haskell looks a little bit darker than KU is because KU has both the light gray and the hatch mark over it, where Haskell University only has the hatch mark, and so it just is a little bit of an optical illusion there. And you can see that the environmental justice zones are in Lawrence, or right around Lawrence. Now, we wanted to think about equity even more in this TIP, and so we looked at best practices and thought about how transportation impacts opportunity and what are some different measures that could tie to that. And so we looked at all this information based on block groups, and so we got data from the census for a person who has a disability, less than a high school diploma, the same minority data, the single parent household data, households without vehicles, youth, senior citizens, and then also low-income data, which is the same from EJ. And then we came up with these different thresholds, and if the block group was 20% higher than the regional average, it got 1 point, and then you can see 2 points and 3 points. And we added that all together, and you can see that the majority of the disadvantaged populations is in Lawrence again. And all these numbers were countywide since this tip is for the entire county. So red is the most amount of points, meaning the greatest transportation disadvantagedness, all the way down to the blue. So this is just comparing the EJ to the transportation disadvantaged. And one of the major things is that EJ is either a yes or no. There's not any sort of gradient in there, where transportation disadvantaged population has a gradient from the scoring system. And those are the TIP projects that are over those areas. And then these maps are showing transit on top of the environmental justice and the transportation disadvantaged. And the map on the left with EJ also shows the quarter-mile bus buffer, because that's the general distance we talk about people walking to get to the bus. So the next steps would be for you all to consider this today. It was recommended for approval by TAC at their meeting, and then we'll send it to KDOT for their inclusion in the state transportation improvement program, and we'll do quarterly updates as needed. I did create this story map, which I'm not sure if you are seeing this anymore. Let me try to reshare.
Oh, I was seeing it.
You were seeing it? Okay. Well, now you can extra see it. So we created this story map to show the data. Rather than just having an interactive map, which is what we've done before, we have this story map, so it provides some context to each of the data sets. And so we have the projects, and then these are the goals that I went through. And then we have environmental justice, and the transportation disadvantaged, and then lastly, all of it together. We're hoping that this is better for people, like I said, because it provides more context, and because this is a confusing set of information, so hopefully having the guidance will be helpful for people. So that is my presentation about the TIP. Any questions for me?
Commissioner Shipley, you were mentioning about the 27th Street Spillway project, that you had added safety to it. Can you indicate how it wasn't on there before, or what
Sure.
to cause that change?
Yeah. So previously, when the project sponsors submitted the projects, they just looked at the goals, and just whoever submitted the project selected what they selected, and didn't necessarily think about the holistic thing of how that project is tying in with K-10 and how it's providing access and helping improve the safety of the whole area. And so we had looked at all of the projects and added in things that we thought it was appropriate to have. Jessica, do you have any?
Yeah, Jessica Mortinger, Transportation Planning Manager. So in this case, one of the conversation points that happened after we published the draft TIP was we received a copy of the traffic impacts study that was done in regard to that project, where one of the safety recommendations is that project in relation to that intersection. And so that was additional information that we hadn't been provided prior to just receiving the project submission. And typically, each project sponsor, so that could vary to multiple different people from each city government that submits, or state that submits projects, gives us the information that's best available based on how they're filling it out. And oftentimes we weren't always double checking or validating that. And so this is an instance where we went back and additional information that we were provided yielded us an interpretation of an analysis that would be meeting that goal.
Commissioner Shipley again. I did also want to ask Ashley, you were indicating how you publish these. It seems surprising that there's this many projects on a list and no one would have any comments at all. And I was casting my mind back. I didn't see those on social media, either at the county or at the city. So I heard you listing the places that you advertise it. Are we doing the best we can to make sure people understand this is something they should look at?
Oh, you got it, Jessica? Not me.
Yeah, so Jessica Mortinger, Transportation Planning Manager. We find the TIP to be a very technical document, and so oftentimes we are not getting public comments in relation to projects that have been programmed in the TIP. The reality of that is all of these projects that end up in the TIP have or should have, before this part in the process for transportation planning, been included in long-range plans, other regional or corridor studies, and or included in city, county capital improvement programs, and or from the state, part of a state fiscal process for selection. And so those independent processes often yield public engagement at a higher level than what we see once we get to the technical programming of just entering it into the document. The MPO, in that sense, because we don't allocate our own funding, we don't receive set-aside funding, isn't programming funding or making financial decisions about any of these projects. And so that kind of hamstrings a little bit even public engagement at this point, because really most of the comments we would get on anything included in this, we would almost really, we could make a decision on whether or not to include it, but the reality is we would really have to forward that back to all of the project sponsors, and it would really be in their court to evaluate and address where it's appropriate in the regional picture.
Yeah, and Madam Messina, KDOT, if I can add that for comparison, even in the Wampo, Wichita, and Mark, Kansas City MPO areas, it is quite rare to get comments, public comments on the TIP. It's not an exciting process as it is with the plan preparation for public involvement earlier on in the process.
I'll add to that a little more. Jessica Mortinger, Transportation Planning Manager. So we did actually have a situation where somebody had seen our press release at the library, and they have a new social media engagement person who basically created a list of questions that were more in line with, tell us your transportation challenges and goals. And it was really more in line with what the engagement we would do around a long-range plan development like T2040. And so we had went and asked them like, well, that's not really the scope of this document and this engagement. So if you're encouraging people to submit comments outside of the scope of what this document's really capable of doing, that concerns us in terms of just disenfranchisement around soliciting for comments that are outside of the scope of what can be controlled in this process.
So I'll just be clear, those two questions are kind of connected, and I'm sure you all know that there's a lot of discussion around the 27th Street project. I'm sure that's part of the reason it got added, safety got added. And I'm not sure that if those groups had understood this was something that they could have commented on, they might have. It might not have been relevant, but they probably would have. And through of other projects list that may not happen even this year, but later people may have comments on and wonder, why were we talking about this 2 years ago and now we're seeing it? And that's the real reason why I'm asking, because then this becomes, or can become, the list of reasons why this needs to happen, and seems somewhat disembodied from broader. So I appreciate your comment, but that's the reason I'm asking.
Sure. Jessica Mortinger, Transportation Planning Manager. I'd point out that just because it's on this list of projects doesn't mean that the city could still not choose for, in regard to that specific picture, make a decision about design elements. I mean, I think those things are all still as part of the conversation in the process. Also, there have been, and there are always, projects in here that get programmed that, while they may be currently budgeted, CIPs change or priorities change, and that's why we do quarterly amendments. They get at the discretion of local conversation about funding and values. We add or remove or amend projects and details to projects in this TIP.
Yeah, thank you. And while CIPs get amended all the time, the broader public and probably broader public, as you pointed out, doesn't entirely understand what this is either. Right. So I appreciate that it's technical. I read the stuff you send me. That doesn't mean someone somewhere might not be interested in it.
Sure.
Jessica, thanks for that explanation. Are there any other questions, comments? Okay, sorry, I forgot to say who I am, Michelle DeRusso, County Commissioner. This is an action item. So do we have a motion to review and approve the federal fiscal year 2021 to 2024 TIP?
I'll make the motion to approve. Matt Messina, KDOT.
We have a second?
Brad Finkel, aye, second.
Moved and seconded. Jessica, I'll turn it over to you.
Thank you, Jessica Mortinger, Transportation Planning Manager. Roll call vote. Kramer?
Aye.
DeRusso?
Aye.
Finkeldie?
Aye.
Messina?
Aye.
Sands, who's not absent and not to his own fault. Shipley?
Aye.
Struckoff.
Aye.
That passes unanimously 6-0.
Thank you. Moving on to our next agenda item, performance measure 5, 21, and 23 data update. Ashley?
Yes, I'm Ashley Myers, Transportation Planner, and I'm going to share my screen again. All right. So as I mentioned, Transportation 2040 has performance measures. There's 26 of them, and we first compiled all the data during the development of Transportation 2040. And then that plan was approved in March of 2018. We started working on updating the data, and we very quickly realized that it wasn't possible to update all the data at once because there's different times that data is available. And so in June, we set up a plan to just update data once it's available and to put it on the new performance measure website after it's approved. This is our first set of performance measures that are coming to you with updated data, and these 3 do not have any targets. They're just community-based performance measures, so they're not the federally required ones, and they just have updated data. So this first one is performance measure 5, the percentage of population with access to a quarter mile of a bus stop. And so now we have 2015, 2019, and 2020 data, and we plan to update this every year. This one is density of urban area for Eudora and Lawrence, and now we have yearly data. And then we have daily vehicle miles traveled per capita, and we have that for every year for each jurisdiction. So we'll update for 2020 next year in 2021, just based on when data is available. And yeah, those are the 3 with the updated data. Any questions about those?
Michelle DeRusso, County Commissioner. So no questions or comments for Ashley on that item? guys are so quiet today. Okay, this is also an action item. We need a motion to approve the updated performance measures 5, 21, and 23.
Brad Finkel, aye. So moved.
We have a second?
Eric Struckhoff, second.
Moved and seconded. Jessica?
Jessica Mortinger, Transportation Planning Manager, roll call vote. Kramer?
Aye.
DeRusso?
Aye.
Finkeldye?
Aye.
Messina?
Aye.
Shipley?
Aye.
Struckhoff?
Aye.
Motion passes unanimously 6-0.
Thank you, Jessica. Now we have some updates.
Absolutely. Jessica Mortinger, Transportation Planning Manager. I'll go through the quick updates we have real quick, and then we can talk about any additional detail you want. We are out for public comment right now on our Safe Routes to School plans for Lawrence, Baldwin City, and Eudora through the 19th. We've spent an extensive amount of time doing engagement around the framework for Safe Routes to School, and we'll be bringing those plans to you with recommended routes and best practices for all the E's of Safe Routes to School planning, and we're really excited about those projects. The plans are out for draft online, and if you want to start to take a look at those, we'd be excited. There's going to be a lot more presentation that we provide to you hopefully in November. Our draft UPWP is out for public comment for next year's work plan, and we'll hope to bring that to you in November. And we're pending closing of the final public comment period at the end of October. We also are getting ready to put out for public comment tomorrow, Ashley.
Yep.
And that will be our 2021 safety target setting that we will hopefully bring back to you also in November. Ashley drafted and attached the attached targets that we have set. What she will be posting, though, is some additional data that relates to a conversation we had last year that some of you may recall, which previously we had all of the serious injury and fatality data divided up by geographic area it was assigned to, but we come to find out that it really is more contingent on roadway maintenance or ownership, who mains or owns the section of roadway where the crashes occurred, as a way to identify locations and actors who would be responsible for possible projects. And so Ashley's dug back through the data to go back and attribute those not to just the geographical area where they occurred, but who maintains the road where they occurred. And you'll see that kind of allows us to account for previously, even if it happened on a highway or I-70, for example, it was attributed to unincorporated Douglas County, which really wasn't the true ownership, because Douglas County wouldn't be responsible for some of those road sections. It would be KDOT. And so that's going to hopefully give us a little better way to do some analysis and to target where there are locations that are common, reoccurring as hotspots. And so we'll be looking forward to being able to evaluate that data on that level. And that was a conversation previously that the Technical Advisory Committee brought up. I've also attached their most recent minutes from August that are approved and posted online. We'd be happy to entertain any other questions or comments you have about any of that work. You can see November will probably be a pretty busy month with a lot of product for you to look at.
Commissioner Shipley, I might want to go back to the Safe Routes to Schools a little bit, and then maybe you'll talk more about this later, but I don't know if you remember which staff member I was talking to, but I had real serious questions about the things the City Commission approved funding for this year. Some of them seemed very unnecessary. And so my question was about public engagement, and that response was, yeah, we talked to the schools and the families, but not really the neighborhoods, the people who are about to inherit a sidewalk. So we did have a little conversation about that. I just want to be sure that we can keep our eye on that. There's more than one partner in those discussions. And, you know, my other question is, are these things, like, for example, one of them was sidewalks on two sides of a road that was only 1 block long, and it wasn't a collector, and it wasn't a arterial or anything like that. I found that hard to understand. So I just want to be sure they're also compared to other projects in town, maybe not even safe routes, because that's still money we're spending, not always federal money, sometimes general fund, or the funding for those comes from all kinds of places. So I just want to be sure, even early in the process, that we're being transparent and inclusive in discussions about which ones we prioritize.
Jessica Morton's your transportation planner or planning manager. To address some of your concerns, I think in our public engagement process, we included Lawrence area neighborhoods in terms of all of the neighborhoods on any of the email lists would have been eligible for any of our public engagement we did online, except for the stuff that was specifically targeted to parents, like the parent survey. And even still, it had an option to basically say if you are a neighbor and or if you were a parent of a student, and that was evaluated. Oftentimes, many of the projects that get drafted in these lists, well, one, they're gonna have changed a little bit. So, for example, the recommendation is no longer for safe routes to school, even if it falls on a local street, to be on both sides because of the need citywide. I think we felt it's more fiscally prudent to ensure there's sidewalk on at least one side of local streets, but not both sides of local streets. So that's a change in a recommendation that you'll see. We also have had conversations, particularly with city staff, in implementing some of this gap infill as an opportunity to begin prioritizing the gaps on many of these routes based on some equity considerations. So thinking not just solely about demand, but free and reduced lunch percentages of populations in relation to school, boundaries. And so those are some considerations I think we've tried to make in this plan to be more thoughtful and prudent with the limited resources that are available. Not always historically has MPO staff been involved in specific projects out of the entire list of gaps. When selecting those for projects for TA, the MPO is not always involved at the city level of choosing which projects are selected for some of those grant applications. And this most recent year, we participated in that process and got to have a little more input and conversation about the data that would be available to help make decisions around prioritizing sidewalk gaps. So I think that we recognize that additional sidewalk needs expand capacity in all of the communities that we work in. And the reality is we have to be really prudent with the funding that we get because it's limited and we are not going to be able to build out our networks in a meaningful way if we aren't. So I think that the intention of the plan is that. How it gets implemented, I think, is a separate sometimes discussion.
Thank you, Jessica. Commissioner Shipley, did that answer all of your question?
Commissioner Shipley, yes. Thank you, Jessica.
Okay. DeRusso Commissioner, are there any other comments on dates we received? Okay. Any other business? Any new business? No.
Jessica Morton's your transportation planning manager. Matt, I forwarded the email you provided this morning to all the members of updates. Do you want to go over that list just briefly, since if anybody's watching, that won't have been in their record until the minutes, and then they can ask any questions they may have about that. In the future also, are you planning to provide that prior to our agenda being sent out so we can attach that to our agenda?
Yes, exactly.
Okay, that would be great.
So we're beginning to prepare monthly. We'll be updating it almost weekly so that it's available for various months that we have throughout the month. that promotes and advertises some of KDOT's efforts and opportunities to be engaged with some of our programs, projects, and just other events that we have going on. This is just a way to make sure that MPO members, and we're doing this for our public transit partners as well, are up to date and informed of opportunities for applying for funds, for promoting something else that we have going on, and for basically just being great partners. So a couple of the things that we had for October, we just want to keep letting people know that we are primarily working from home, so using a phone number that you may have for us isn't always the best option. Email would work best. We are checking our voicemail, and a lot of us were successful in setting up a call forward to our personal phones. I, on one hand, was not successful doing that, so I'm just checking my voicemail daily. October is the first recognized National Pedestrian Safety Month, which is an item that we've been promoting with our partners at NHTSA and USDOT. So you'll be seeing a good amount of promotional information coming from KDOT on that. We, as a state, have a new strategic highway safety plan for 2020 through 24. So a lot of that is going to have action items tied specific to reducing traffic-related fatalities and serious injuries, with action items all related to specific areas that are areas of emphasis for concern, such as teen drivers, older drivers, drunk driving or driving while intoxicated. So not just alcohol, but also drugs and prescription drugs. So that'd be available for you to look at and to find some of the efforts that will be ongoing for the next 5 years. Similarly tied to the safety efforts that were just shared with us for the MPO. A continued resolution of the current transportation funding bill. It's been a wild ride trying to track what would happen to the next transportation bill. Luckily, we were authorized an extension from 2020 to 2021. So what we're familiar with of concurring in 2020 is going to act and behave the same as 2021. And we're going to continue to see how the next bill progresses and to see what kind of changes that would be made that would impact or potentially impact how the DOT or the MPO would be able to operate depending on various program types within that funding package. And then the rest of this is just stuff that would be great to be able to share and be aware of all the different funding program opportunities. Quite a few of these are closed and not currently accepting applications, but when we do have programs that are open and the application is open, we will also provide a link to that application form and the due date for that program's application. But this is just a general overview of what's currently in the ongoing open process. And if you scroll down a little more, you'll see that there's the full program guide that was recently updated at the end of summer. And this is just about everything that we have on a concurring cycle from KDOT that is a potential funding program for any of your transportation needs. So the list goes on, and they're all in that initial link with more details. But again, with these updates that we expect to push out every couple weeks, we'll rise the ones of relevance to the top and make sure that the pertinent information related to them is available. So if you have any questions about this or any recommendations of how it could be improved, who it could be shared with specific to your organizations or local communities, just let me know. Well, I guess I would add that with the intent of this being provided in advance is that so I wouldn't have to scroll through and talk about everything in detail. We give it to you, and if you end up having questions, you can either contact me or the contact point for the individual program that you're sharing.
Michelle DeRusso, County Commissioner. Thank you very much for that update. Does anybody have any questions on information provided? No? Okay, and no other business. So it looks like November 19th is our next scheduled meeting. Is that correct?
Yes.
Okay. Well, if there isn't anything else, then I will move to adjourn. Everybody take care. Thank you.
Thanks.
Thanks.